non-writing prophets, last time talking about a man from Bel Shalisha and how that, I don't know if you had this screen or not, I think you might have it.
Yeah.
Okay. Who Elisha and the prophets were going at a time of famine, things were rough, and a man from Bel Shalisha brings what he has to give to Elisha and the prophets, which what he has is not very much. But God doesn't expect us to give everything and solve all the world's problems. God expects us to just do our part. And so here he brings the bread and grain, and God multiplied this, just like in the New Testament with the fish and loaves. God takes the faith of one believer and uses them, I guess should what I said, takes faith of one believer and uses it as a demonstration of his love and a means of encouragement and hope. We are to be examples and to be used by God in whatever way that he sees fit. If this man from Bel Shalisha looked at what he had and said, well, this is not enough and not even worth bothering, we wouldn't have this example in the scriptures. God simply wants us to do what we can do. God does not hold us responsible for doing everything. We're not going to solve the world's hunger problem, but we can help solve it in one person. We could do our little part, and if every believer, you think about it, if every believer in witnessing, if every believer led one person to the Lord a year, in 20 years, how many people would that be? And there's a lot of people who go the old Christian life, and they don't even know whether they've ever led anybody to the Lord. And I'm not saying they haven't, because a lot of times you lead people to the Lord you don't know about. You witness, you live the example before others. They see Christ in you. You give them the gospel, and they get mad at you or don't respond. You don't know whether they got saved or not, because they may take what you said and apply it to the life years from now. And the people that led me to the Lord, in a sense, in a big sense, they gave me the gospel when I was 6 years old, I think it was. 6, maybe 7, I think it was 6. And they moved away. Well, when I was 22, 22, I went to church with somebody, and when they gave me an invitation, I went forward, and the youth pastor at that church put his arm on my shoulder and he said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Well, I feel good." He said, "Well, that's great," and he walked off. He didn't tell me how to get saved. He didn't say anything about, he just asked me how I felt. But I knew how to get saved because somebody when I was 6 years old told me. And for 16 years, I knew how to get saved, I just never did it. So we don't know how many people have led the Lord, but it is important that we make a difference as much as we can, because later on you may get to heaven and meet somebody that you knew 40 years before, and they're there, and you find out that it was because you witnessed to them. And you made the difference. Helping people out, being the example. Faith in just one person can make a difference in lives of other people. This man from Bel Shalisha just brought what he had. And very importantly, the amount is never what is important. For God's able to multiply our gifts and talents. It shouldn't be like this in churches, but it is, and I don't know of any church that it's not true. That if you had somebody in church who had a whole lot of money, and they decided to give the church $10,000 or $20,000 or more, it wouldn't take very long for everybody in church to know that they gave that much money. And for even sometimes the pastor of church make a big deal out of it, how grateful they are for so-and-so because they gave this amount of money. People like that tend to get glory for their giving. When in reality, there are a lot more people in the church who percentage-wise gave more money, and they'll never be heard about. They may only be able to give $100, but in reality, they gave more than the person gives $10,000. Because frankly, if you're a millionaire and you just give 10% of your money, you're not giving very much. You still got $900,000. But if you're making $20,000 a year and you give $2,000, you've only got $18,000. That's not that much money in comparison. And so it is important we understand that it's not the amount. And that's I think why God gave us the tithe is because everybody gives the exact same amount. If you're a millionaire or if you only made $100 that month, you get the exact same amount. The command here of Elisha about this man from Baal-Shalisha, it says, and there came a man from Baal-Shalisha and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, give unto the people that they may eat. See, Elisha didn't say, well, is that all you have? Or, this is not enough. What am I going to do with it? So give them to them. Let them eat. Where do you have this? Oh, okay, I didn't see my writing. I didn't know. I went over before.
I was daydreaming. No, I wasn't.
No,
I had already written it.
Apparently I turned around the wrong time. But again, this illustrates God's faithfulness and His ability to supply our physical needs. See, Elisha and the prophets were not dependent upon the man from Baal-Shalisha to have their needs met. They were dependent upon God. So if God sent a man that had just a little bit, that's fine. But it demonstrates God's power and God's provision. Not our provision, not our ability to answer somebody's needs. It shows God's ability to take something that is not near enough and to make it overflow. And also it illustrates our responsibility to others. I've heard people say, well, I'd like to be able to give, but I just don't have that much money. Well, if it's given a few dollars and that's all you got, then you have enough to give. It's a widow and the two mites. And one widow, it says, let me find the verse here. It's a great verse, and I think the word is used in the King James. I don't know how it's used in other versions. It's only used one time in the Bible. In Luke 21:4 it says, for all these have of their abundance cast in into the offerings of God, but she of her penury hath cast in all the living that she had. Of her penury. Now, I think a lot of versions may translate that as poverty. Now, a lot of people will translate that word, even people use the King James will say she gave out of her poverty all she had. But if you look up the word penury, it actually means, the Greek word is hysterema, it means a deficit. Specifically poverty, but a deficit. So that's different than poverty. If all you have is 3 cents, that's not a deficit. That's an asset. You have 3 cents. So how could it be a deficit I mean, not only did she give everything she had, she gave more than she had. She may have borrowed this little pittance of money, you know, even if it was a few cents, she borrowed it because she wanted to give to the ministry. And God blessed her for that, for her willingness to give, not just what she had, but to give above what she had. And so, you know, and God doesn't expect you to go out there and take out a loan to pay off the church building or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that she had such a desire to give that she apparently borrowed so she could help give. Again, it wasn't very much money, but for God it was as much as anybody in the world has ever given. The confinement of the attendant. Now the attendant is the helper of the man from Shalisha. He brought the bread, and well, it says, and his servitor, or his servant, said, what should I set before 100 men? So here's the man from Shalisha who brought what he had, which wasn't nearly enough, but he knew God wanted him to give. Elisha says, give to them to eat. But the servant is now watching all this. And he says, well, what should I set this before 100 men? He said again, give the people that they may eat. Elisha said, give the people they may eat. For thus saith the Lord, they shall eat and shall leave thereof. So what we have now is an example to the servant. The servant saying, but this is not nearly be enough. And Elisha said, no, give it to them. And not only are they going to eat, but there's going to be some leftovers. So the attendant and the servant, whatever word you want to use for him, was confused. Human standpoint, that's understandable. But limited by his unbelief. And that's what I'm going to think about. How many times are we limited by our unbelief? When we say things, well, I know God can do anything, but, yeah, I know God can do this, but I just don't. And that we're limited by unbelief. What can God do? Do anything, everything. But we'd say, I know God can do it, but I just don't know. And I know God can make much out of little, but I just don't. And again, that word "but" it negates everything we've said. Limited by our unbelief sometimes. The key lesson of the passage is that God wants us to learn to measure life by God's abilities, not by ours. Measure life by God's abilities. I always wanted to have some talent of some type. I've got a sister who played the piano, she can play flute, she can do all kinds of stuff. I've got another sister, she can draw, just amazing artist. A brother who restores old cars. He won first place in car show last weekend. And I look on people and think, man, that talent out there. And I don't have any talents. I don't have any musical abilities. I can't sing. I can't, and I wish I had some talent. But God is not requiring out of me any talent. Now, like I say, I'd like to have that. I'd like to be able to do something. But God can still use me in spite of myself. And praise God for that. I'd love to have some musical ability or whatever. But I'd say it doesn't matter with God. It's God's abilities that's gonna make the difference. Because how many people I know who have ability to sing, and they know nothing about the Bible? I mean, and they sing gospel music. I mean, we had gospel music singers come to our church one time, and they were sitting on the front row, and the pastor was sitting outside, and the preacher got up to preach, and he said, turn to the book of Romans, and the gospel singer couldn't find the book of Romans. And I'm thinking, he goes to churches and supposedly sings the gospel, but can't even find the book of Romans. And now if he said, you know, he turned to Habakkuk, I can understand, need a little hesitation, but Romans, you know, so he had talent, but I don't think he was glorifying God if he doesn't even know where the book, a main book of the Bible's at. There's a problem. And so sometimes people rely upon their talents, their music, or whatever, and think that's enough to serve God, and it's not. Confidence here of Elisha. He didn't say, give him the food and let's see what's going to happen. He put himself out there. Because God told him that not only will this be enough, it'll be more than enough. I had a student a while back, and she retired, and we were talking about after she retired and all that, and she said one of the things that I hate more than anything else in retirement is she says, I won't be able to give the church as much as I used to be able to give them. And I told her, yeah, you will, because it's not how much you give, you know, it's not whether it's $1,000. If all you have now is 100, then that's enough. But I mean, I understand her, you know, predicament. I understand what she's saying, but the reality of it is, it's not the total dollar amount that makes the difference. It's the heart. It's the attitude behind the giving. Results are in obedience. So he sat before them, and they did eat, and left there according to the word of the Lord. Simply do what God asks you to do, and that's more than enough. All right, we'll stop right there because next we're going to get into Naaman, the Syrian who has leprosy, and kind of switching gears a little bit with that.